I'm going to start by cutting the black fabric for pieces A. If you haven't done so already, you can take off the selvage from one end of your strip, but leave the end where you've got your label so that you can remember which number is which. And we need 2 strips, 2 inches wide by 15.5 long. And I'm going to use my mat to measure the 15.5. So I'm going to line up the left on the line there. And then I'm going to get my ruler and put the 1/2 inch line of the ruler on the 15-inch line of my mat, because I haven't got 1/2 inches on this side. If you have got 1/2 inches, you can just use that. So I've got a little bit over this 1/2 inch mark here. I'm going to go up to 4.5 there. So I'm cutting out a piece that's very slightly oversized that I can then cut down. I can then fold that up, and then I'm going to needle on the right hand side, and then I can then turn it round and cut my 2-inch strips off here. Let's use the ruler line, the white marking 2 inches. There's one. Make sure this is folded out of the way. 2 inches on the end there. There's 2. So I've done that rather than cutting all the way down the strip, because we may need some of that left hole for future blocks. Now, if you're not sure if your mat's accurate at this point, now I've got this folded in half, I can use this ruler to measure it. Then 7 3/4 is half of 15.5. I've got this folded, and that will just give me a really accurate 15.5. So there's my 2 strips A. Now for B, C, D and E, we're using the light version of the black that we just did. So that's fabric number 38, it's 9253L1, if you're doing the Alison Glass fabrics. We need 2 strips, 9.5 inches by 2 inches. Now I've got a little bit left over from last time here, so I might use one of these. So I want 9.5, and this is a 2-inch strip already, so there's one of my strips, so I can use that one. And then I need another one. So I'm going to go to the piece that I was working from last time. I can put my ruler on like this, 2 inches along the bottom, 9.5 inches on my left. And I'm just going to oversize it because it needs trimming down a little bit. So it'll be easier to do it this way and then trim it, I think. So up there and along, and then I'll turn it through 180 degrees and 9.5 inches on the left. So we've got the nice edges that we've just cut. Then I can just gently trim that tiny little bit off there. So those are my 2 strips B. And now I'm going to do a rectangle, 2 inches by 3.5. Is that piece big enough? No. So if I carry on along here and save that big chunky bit, because you never know when I might need it, I'm going to do 2 inches by 3.5. So if I come up 2 inches roughly and across 3.5, but it's very slightly oversized so I can trim it. Just be careful not to go too far up that way. 2 inches, 3.5 inches, there. So that's rectangle C. Now for D I've labelled as a QST, which stands for quarter square triangle. So usually, traditionally in patchwork, you cut a square and then you cut it twice on the diagonal. But we only need 3 triangles. So what we can do is cut a strip and then cut our triangles from that strip. So for this one, I'm just going to take my fabric and I'm actually going to complete that 2-inch strip all the way along. So you could actually cut your 2-inch strip for this whole block. Okay. Now, if you have the Creative Grids 90-degree quarter square triangle ruler, this comes into its own at this point. So what we need is 3 quarter square triangles. So this cuts quarter square triangles. So with this one, if we put our 2-inch line on the bottom here, we can cut both sides. And that's going to give us a quarter square triangle in the size we want. We turn it around. Put the 2 inches on the top. There. Turn it around again, and 2-inch line on the bottom. There's our 3 triangles. And I have given you a template. If you don't have this ruler, you can make your own template. And that's this QST3. Effectively, if you sewed 4 of these triangles together in a square, you would end up with a 3-inch finished square. Traditional patchwork, you cut a 4 1/4 inch square and then cut it on the diagonal. So I'll just demonstrate that for you, how that works. If I put these together, obviously you can see that we've taken the tip off, which just helps our sewing. But that would be the size of our square that we'd have had to cut if we'd done it the traditional way, which is 4 1/4. So these rulers are quite magic, really, the way they work, saving us a lot of work in terms of cutting squares, cutting on the diagonal. They give us a lot of accuracy, and also they save a bit of fabric. So that's those ones. Now for the half square triangles, I'm using this ruler, which is the 45-degree half square triangle ruler. And again, we're going to use a 2-inch strip. Now if you want to do this the traditional way, you've had to cut to 2 3/8 square and then cut it on the diagonal. But using this way, we can do it with a 2-inch strip, and then we're going to cut 10 half square triangles. The one thing I do really love about these is that they are so accurate. So let's take the edge off there. If you're left-handed, you can work from the right-hand side, cut there, then turn your ruler and cut again. If you're right-handed, work from the left-hand side, place your ruler on, cut there, turn your ruler, place it on, and cut again. Turn your ruler, cut again, turn your ruler. You can keep going until you run out of fabric. If the end with the fold isn't quite big enough, just open your fabric out and you'll just get 1 triangle out, but here I'm getting 2. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Let's use this little scrap here And we can get our 10th one. So it's a really handy way to be able to use up smaller pieces than you would if you had to cut the squares, and also a lot more accurate, so you'll find your sewing a lot easier, and some of your bunny ears are already taken off. If you want to be ready to sew and make it really easy for yourself for sewing, if you trim these other bunny ears off as well, that's going to make it really easy. So they'll be like die cut pieces that we use in our mystery quilts. So we'll put the 2 on there, and I'm just going to take the triangle off the end like that. And you can do the same with these quarter squares. Just make sure they're really well lined up before you do it. It's not time to be saving time on it, so if you need to, just do them one at a time. But this is also going to save you all that trimming. If you've done half square triangles before, sewn them together and had to trim to size, you won't have to do that anymore. So all I'm doing here is I'm just pushing this up to the end of this quarter square triangle, so it's a bit bigger than the half square, just so that I can take those ends off. Now be very careful, if you do make a template, you make it from cardboard by gluing your paper onto some card like a cereal box, cut out roughly and then cut on the line, but do not use that for cutting your fabric. If you're going to use a template with card, always put your ruler on top of the template and use your ruler for cutting, because I don't want to see anybody in hospital with cut fingers from trying to cut with a cardboard template. Okay, so that's my D triangles, the larger ones, and those are my E triangles, the small ones. So now it's a case of working my way through each of the colours. So I'm going to show you one colour. I'll show you which colours we're going to do them in. So we've got our pink, number 3, 9730E. We've got 89020 with the orange, which is fabric number 30. And then we've got the yellow here, which is fabric number 41, 9253Y. Then we have this teal colour, 8902T1, which is number 32. And then we have 9730P, which is fabric number 7. So for these 5 fabrics, we're going to cut 1 of our quarter square triangles and 2 of our half square triangles. So I'm taking the selvage off, and now I'm going to put my 5 inches on the right, my 2 inches on the bottom, and if you haven't got a nice straight line down the bottom here, just push it up a little bit, because we can trim that afterwards. So cut there, and then if I'm cutting this way, I'm making sure that my whole body and my arm are completely out of the way. Being me, I cut left-handed. So I've cut my 2 inch by 5 inch rectangle here. I'm going to start by cutting my half square triangle, my first one, like that. Now I'm going to flip my fabric, put the 2 inch line of the quarter square triangle on the bottom of the strip and cut. Then take my half square triangle ruler again, put it with the 2 inch line on the top of the strip and cut on the right hand side. And there we go. Now if I had to cut these the traditional way, I would have had to cut a 4 1/4 inch square and wasted 3 of the triangles, and then I would have had to cut a 2 3/8 square to get these 2 half triangles. Now for P and Q, we are going to use this blue fabric. We need a 2 inch by 13 inch strip. So I'm going to work at the opposite end to my label. So what I'm going to do is line up my selvage with the holes just to the left of the line there. And then I need 13 inches. So I'm going to make a cut at 13 inches. And I can use my ruler so that I know it's not going to be too big a cut. Just putting it on the 2 inch line here. So make my one cut, and then I'm going to turn my fabric and fold this down, and fold this out of the way, and then put my 2 inch line, but just slightly over the 2 inch line so I can tidy it up in a minute, on the left, and cut through. So now I'm going to tidy up my 2 inches and do the tidy cut. And now I should be able to get all of my pieces out of this strip. I'll cut a half square triangle first. Turn my fabric over. Get my 1/4 square. One of those, and then carry on down the strip cutting half square triangles. And now the last piece we need to cut for this block is R, and I need a 3 1/2 by 4 1/2 rectangle of this 8902P, which is fabric number 31. I'm going to go 4 1/2 in this direction and 3 1/2 in this direction. Now my half square triangles for this one are going to be cut with the half square triangle ruler using the 3 1/2 inch line. So I'm putting the 3 1/2 inch line on the bottom here and the edge on the edge of the fabric there. I can turn my ruler around and then cut on the right. So there we go, that's all the pieces for the arrows block.